everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. It is Tuesday, and you know what time it is on Tuesday at 1 o'clock.
It is 1 o'clock go live time.
It is go live time.
Yeah, go live and Comic-Con.
Yes, that's right. We're in San Diego, and it's the start of Comic-Con tomorrow.
Tomorrow, but they're all here already.
All tomorrow. So, Wayne is in his best superhero outfit.
I've got my Barbie wash on here. They put the pink Barbie filter on me today.
He is super branch manager, super regional manager. So thanks for being here today.
You are welcome. All I got to do is just walk downstairs.
Yes.
It's easy.
It's great. Brent sends his love. He's out on location, fighting the good fight for all of us out there, and sends his best wishes today. So we've got an amazing panel today.
Very amazing. I'm looking forward to it. These guys are rock stars.
Oh my gosh. They really should be on these Comic-Con panels, like some of these celebrities that come into town, right?
Exactly.
So it really is going to be in a great panel today. So before we get into that, and as we allow some additional people to come into the room, I want to share a quick agent service announcement. And I know I sound like a broken record.
This is a good one, though.
When I talk about property management. So right now we're in the season of vacation rentals, right? And so many of our locations, we have clients that own property that offer homes up, be it their second home, vacation homes, for summer vacation opportunities.
20, 30, 40, 50,000 a month.
Yeah, in some cases, right? So the interesting part of that is vacation rentals, as many of you know, if you've ever stayed in an Airbnb or VRBO, they're quite labor intensive, right? And so often our agents, in the spirit of service, will get involved in some of the changeovers and the handovers and the day-to-day management of the season.
Housekeeping.
And therein lies the challenge. Because while we all know it as vacation rentals, temporary housing, the reality is it's property management. We're actually managing property, albeit for a short period of time. It's still property management. And that is something that we don't do. It is one of the carve-outs in our risk management plan. And it is something, as a brokerage, we have decided to set aside. Our hope is that you are going to refer those types of opportunities out to other people. I realize that sometimes that can be challenging because you've spent a lot of time developing these relationships and these clients. And, if we're really into servicing that client, sometimes they look to us to continue that service into these temporary housing.
So if I'm going to buy a $4 million house from you, Sam, why can't you check my guests in for me?
Yeah, the reality is that it's a very specific skill set, in my opinion. And I think that in truly servicing your client, you really should guide them to someone who is an expert in that facet, right? Because there are some amazing short-term rental property managers that do a fantastic job. And they know how to see the things around the corner that those of us that are not dealing with that on a daily basis or as part of our normal business repertoire, that it creates more risk for you and candidly creates more risk for your client. So you've worked so hard to get that client only to possibly disappoint them only because it's not a lane that you are typically working in. And so that's the danger that you run up against. And then the other thing is handling the monies. Right? And making sure that the monies get into the proper accounts. Now, I'll remind everybody that anytime you touch a dime of a client's money, we have to properly account for that. Even if you're just curring that money over to them, so you're collecting it from a tenant and you touch that money and you're just driving it over to them, we have to account for that properly by DRE standards.
Well, and the beauty of VRBO and Airbnb and others, they take care of all that.
They do. But it's important, however, because there's an electronic component in all of this, that those Airbnb VRBOs should be done in those clients' accounts
Correct.
versus you as the agent creating an account and facilitating that. Your client may say, I don't want to deal with that. Can you just do it for me? The problem is that you're opening an account under your name, under your financial accounts and things like that. So you're actually crossing a line that's
sounds like a trust fund violation to me.
Pretty egregious, and we just can't have you do that, right? So before you get into managing any short-term or vacation rentals, check in with your branch manager, check in with any compliance, call me, call Wayne. Let's make sure that you are deploying the proper risk management, you're following the proper procedures, just so that we keep you out of harm's way.
But I have E&O insurance. Why wouldn't that cover me?
Because it doesn't cover these property management circumstances, nor does it cover
out of the scope.
Yeah, nor does it cover violations of key regulations, and that dealing with trust fund money is a big one.
Exactly.
Right? So I know you probably are scratching your head and thinking, well, what's all the details? I can't give you necessarily the dirty details, but
just know there's a problem.
Just know that it's one of those circumstances that you need to get some help with, okay?
That's right.
All right, very good. All right, sounds good. Anything else in the world of...
In the world? No, we're getting busy here. We've had a lot of sales come in. Downtown, Coronado, Point Loma. We've been a little quiet. I hope everyone is seeing that in their respective regions, but we are picking up. Daphne was inundated this morning with sales.
Yeah, and maybe in the chat, you all could share with us from wherever you're joining us from, how is the market looking? Are you seeing an uptick in sales, activity? If you held an open house over the weekend, let us know. Great.
Yeah, busy.
Claire is saying they're busy in Orange County. That's fantastic. So let us know. Well, actually, our guests that we have on today are some of the busiest people in their specific marketplaces, and we're really excited to have them on. So, and we're going to
get to it.
We're going to get to a great discussion, and today we're talking about negotiations and really the 360-degree conversation of negotiations, right? Because I think, Wayne, a lot of times, when we talk about the word negotiations, we usually are referring to negotiating our commission, right? And negotiating a purchase contract, right? But there are negotiations that happen literally every moment of our business.
Exactly. And we are seeing so many negotiations in the escrow now because the buyer feels that they have the upper hand because there weren't multiple offers on a property
during a transaction,
and they are just going all out to get everything replaced. So then there's a negotiation with them. There's a negotiation with your seller if you're the listing agent trying to, keep that, everyone happy.
Yeah, so let's just dive right into it. So the first person I want to introduce is Mr. Chris Smith. If we can bring Chris Smith on. Chris is a wonderful agent. He is the head of the Bartron Group up in Santa Barbara and has done a fantastic job up there leading some amazing agents.
There he is.
How you doing, Mr. Chris?
Hello, team. I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Really quickly, how's the market? What's happening in your neck of the woods in 30 seconds?
Yeah, it's been very active. We just came out of our meeting actually with Kyle. And this week, listings are a little low, but that happens to us every July. And I think it happens across a lot of the markets in California. People are at, soccer
vacation,
camp, at travel, vacation. So, but other than a week or two of low listings, we're moving, we're cranking.
Right on. And so to kick off the conversation, and we'll bring in just a moment Matt and Lauren, but just to kick off the conversation really quickly and to set the stage here for us. So share a time where a negotiation kind of fundamentally changed the way you approach your business today. Was there a moment that you can think of that kind of shaped how you wanted to change things?
Yeah, I gave this question some thought, and so many defining stories resurfaced from different areas in my career, from very early on to over the years to where I'm at now. And I thought about sharing those stories, but I don't know if that's really what needs to be told. I think the bigger story here is the lessons that have come from that.
Sure.
And I think looking back, I used to think that a negotiation meant I needed to win or convince people or to get some sort of victory. And what I've realized today is that it's not about creating winners and losers. And if you're creating winners or losers, you've kind of lost perspective on what's going on. And it's more about solving problems and bringing ultimately what matters to the buyer or seller and solving those problems than creating a winner or loss. There shouldn't be a winner or loser in a transaction, right? Winning to me is there's multiple offers and I was one of the buying offers and we won out against everyone else. We'll talk about some of that stuff, but due to preparation and other things. But I think what has changed in my career is just a better understanding of what I'm doing. I'm acting on behalf of my client rather than trying to beat an agent or win versus the other side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that I love that. I absolutely love
great.
that, right? Like it's not about winners and losers, right? We're serving real humans on the other side of this, right? I love that. All right, let's bring in next Matt McIntyre from Pasadena. Matt is a wonderful top producing agent up in Pasadena. And I have to say, every time I watch the Tournament of Roses, there's only one person I think of every single time. Well, every time I think Pasadena, because he is Mr. Pasadena.
That's true. I used to think of Maryland, but now I think of
I've always thought of Matt from day one. But the Tournament of Roses, because what a little fun fact.
Yes.
This gentleman is part of the organization and the leadership of the Tournament of Roses that happen every single year. Did you know that?
I did not know that, but that's why everything is so precise and perfect, because you are on top of everything, Matt.
Yes, it's totally all because of me.
All because of you.
If you ever see somebody running up and down the parade routes with a white suit and like a headset on, and that Matt is one of those people.
I love it. I love it.
It is fantastic.
So Matt, what about you? What is one thing you had wished you have learned earlier about negotiation in your career?
Okay, so I thought also, like Chris, I thought a lot about this. And I think the lesson that I learned was not to put a lens on negotiation. It's not good, it's not bad. Much like what Chris said, it's problem solving. And so if everybody gives a little bit, you can solve a problem. And I think early on, I had put a lens on negotiations. We were talking a little bit about request for repair, right? I think you said that way. I used to put a lens on that I hated it. I hated the request for repair. So I went into that process with sort of this negative mindset. And I think ultimately that impacted the client. If you don't go in with that mindset, you just treat it one step at a time.
I love that Matt just said that, because I listen to a lot of agents on the phone when an agent will call them regarding a request for repair, and immediately they'll say, "My seller will never do that." And I'm thinking, you haven't even spoken to your seller. Why are you even saying that? But I think you're right. A lot of, we have this, we want to protect our client mentality.
And we should, but we should do that. And this is what I think Matt does so well, is you do it in the context of, I have to present everything to my client, give them all the information that they need and give them the options and allow them to make the decision and then go and advocate based on that decision. Is that fair? I mean,
very fair.
And the way you are just articulated, the lens, the way you see it, gosh, that's eye-opening for me, because I think there's a lot of things that we put a lens on, right? And we look through that with our own either biased or experiences. And so, wow, that's
instead amazing. Of the rose-colored glasses, seeing the true piece of it.
I'm looking forward to learning more. And so now let's go to Lauren Ravitz.
Now, isn't she someplace?
Well, not anymore. She just got back, but I feel like there has to be an entire show. Where in the world is Lauren Ravitz? Because I love it. And I am 100% convinced, and I think she is too, that every time she books travel, like multiple deals come her way.
It's true. You got to keep booking, Lauren.
Yes,
Kona, come on,
the
Kona.
travel real estate gods love me.
Secret is that I actually want to grow up and be Lauren Ravitz. That's really what I want to do.
I don't think you'd look good in a dress. Sorry.
I don't know. If I could wear her Valentinos like the way she sports them,
There you go.
I think it would be great. All right. So how about you, Lauren? So what's one negotiation that, I think a lot's been said already between the two gentlemen, but in terms of what most agents don't realize that the negotiations that they're having, what's one that if you were to give them a quick piece of advice, what would that be in terms of negotiations?
Well, when I think about negotiations and we think about like the seller side where you represent a seller and then the buyer side where you represent the buyer, I think the negotiations start with the seller first in terms of the first conversation and the management of expectations and building the trust and credibility that you're the knowledge broker and you know what's best and you are honestly negotiating for yourself with the seller. And I think that the back end of the negotiations, when you represent a buyer, I think that falls a lot to our agent relationships and our agent rapport. And I think what people don't realize is even today, I have a multiple offer going through with an agent who I've only communicated with via email. That's not okay.
Yeah.
We need to communicate on the phone with voices, with tone, and that is part of the negotiation that I'm doing on behalf of my seller and that she has to do on behalf of her buyer. And that is a whole undertone and underbelly of a deal that goes a complete different direction than the parties who are coming together.
The emotional intelligence in the transaction, right? And you can't have an emotional, intelligent conversation. And I'm hesitant to even use that word emotional because I think we unfortunately tie that too much to like crying or overly happy, but that's not it. Like you said it best, Lauren, the tone.
You're right. And the tone gets it's misconstrued in an email and it's also misconstrued in a text message. Because when an agent gets a text message or your client gets a text message from you, they could be in a bad mood and they're going to read this thing the wrong way. So we need to get, like you said, it needs to be on the phone so we can hear each other. We can feel the tone, convey why they should accept your multiple offer.
I now know why doing a deal with Lauren Ravitz is always fantastic because she's somewhere in the world happy, right?
So Lauren, you kind of answered the next question. When do you believe the negotiation actually begins? And, which is early on, in the process before anything even gets listed or an offer written when you're talking with your client.
Yeah.
But which conversation early in the client relationship do you think creates the most leverage later on in the transaction?
Well, I guess when you're working on behalf of a buyer, I mean, you're earning their trust to get the buyer broker agreement signed. You're negotiating your compensation that they're willing to pay if the seller doesn't pay. And if they're interviewing other people, you're negotiating for them to work for yourself. So once you solidify that and have that rapport and credibility, that then can carry through to the deal where they're looking to you for counsel. They're looking for you for guidance. You can, as Matt said, lay out all the options where they always will make their own decision, but they fall back on, well, what would you do? You can negotiate and discuss with them what you think is the best path forward to get them the opportunity and the deal that they want. So that's part of that negotiation that starts like with the buyer broker conversation. And I think that on the listing side with the seller, it's the same thing. The sellers are interviewing multiple candidates to hire. They're hiring you for whatever reason that is, your track record, your reputation, your rapport, your availability to go on camera and market their property digitally, whatever it is. And when things aren't working, you have to go back and renegotiate a price reduction or what you need to do or advice on offers and the ways to respond. So it all has to land with credibility and the fact that they hired you for a reason, you know what you're doing, and you need to be left to do your job.
Yeah, and let's bring up the other two gentlemen and let's dive into this group conversation here because I think those many of us, and candidly, many of the top professionals like all of you, sometimes, not suggesting the three of you, but sometimes take for granted some of the early conversations that you actually have that set up for these key negotiations along the way. You guys do it so seamlessly today. But if I can, Matt, I'll go to you first. If I can point to you and think of maybe an early conversation, and we'll stay squarely focused on, let's say, a seller, because many times you are all having conversations with what would be a seller who signs a contract with you months down the line, because it's pretty rare, right? Where somebody just calls you one particular day and then next week they're on the market and you're off and running. Usually there is a long conversation, preparatory conversations. And so how do you approach some of those early conversations that set the stage for your negotiations later on?
Yeah, so Sam, you and I talked about that a little bit, and I think for me, I would reframe it as it's sort of an orientation. It's an orientation to what the process looks like. It's preparing the client for what's ahead of them, so that when we get there, it's not shocking. And I love language that illustrates things. So I'll talk about, there are always bumps in the road, but they're speed bumps. They're not going to they're not going to flatten your tire. So we need to figure out where those are and how we work through them. I will very early on disclaim that my job is to turn the buyer over and shake them really hard until every penny comes out of their pockets. And I'm going to turn those pennies over to you. So if you don't want me to do that, you have to stop me, because I take my job really seriously, and that's my job.
Oh, he said future pacing his commission negotiation, right? Like he's already talking about how he's going to squeeze out value, which squeezes in value for him.
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
I know you're uncomfortable with saying that, and I'm saying it in a very crude way, but that's really what this is. And you should not be bashful about that, right? I always say you deserve to be what, Lauren, what is it? A Gucci bag or an Hermes bag or what, right? Useful, but high end where everybody sees value, right? Sorry, I interrupted you, Matt.
No. I think that kind of summarizes it. I give them kind of that illustrative language so that when we get there, they have those memories that they can go back to, and they're prepared for where we are.
And Matt, you're very you don't deviate either, which is great. When you let your clients know what you're going to do, because you and I were dealing with a client that had canceled a transaction many times, and you just were done. You're just like, I'm not. Yeah. What's your rule? You cancel once or twice, you're done.
Cancel once, that can happen to anyone. You cancel twice, we're likely no longer working together.
Yeah. And that's good. I mean, it sets the stage.
I feel, and this is not maybe necessarily negotiations, but I feel like we leverage our relationships with other agents to accomplish things for our clients. I mean, Lauren was talking about talking to agents on the phone. So we leverage those relationships all the time. And if we have a client that's going to ruin those relationships, it's going to impact others. And I can't let it impact, the family.
That's a great point.
I like that.
That's a great point. How about you, Chris? What's an early conversation that you like to have with a client, buyer or seller, that helps kind of future pace things for you?
Yeah, just following up on the two of them, it just really goes back to uncovering the motivations behind either, the seller or the buyer. And you really have to sit back and listen to what those motivations are and then set the expectations, right? You have to become, I think one of the things that helps me in this business, and it's just my nature, is I'm just a very curious person. And when the curiosity drives the motivation to uncover what's going on. And once you understand what they're doing, then you could set the expectations very, very early on, right? And there's probably people on here that don't have a lot of transactional history under their belt. And as you move on, you start to be able to have some foresight into how these processes are going to play out. And you could set up these expectations for the buyer or the seller. On the seller side, if you've been to explosions, you've probably heard me talk about setting the expectations up and aligning yourself with the seller, not negotiating against your seller, but aligning yourself with the seller and being able to say, this is what's going on with the market. This is what's going on with buyers. This is what's going on since the pandemic. This is what's happening with buyers who didn't make the purchase and now rates have gone up and prices gone up. So we are aligned. And how do you feel about this now, right? And really aligning yourself with them. The other thing to remember is where people are at, right? We got so caught up in going back to question one was, how has negotiation changed? And I used to look at it as like winning or convincing people. Now it's about solving problems for people. And you got to realize that some of these people, sellers, have been in their house 10, 20 years, raised kids, had their first child, sent their first child off to college in these homes. And most likely that person is sitting there looking to sell their home for whatever reason. And they're probably tying in all these memories that they have in this home to the price. And you have to be creative to separate that and remind them that, they're selling their home, but they get to take the memories with them, right? And then put that in the marketplace. And on the opposite end with the buyers, you probably need to go back and when a house comes up, maybe have a conversation about emotional value and the fact that they're going to raise their family there for 10 years or where they're at. Maybe they're downsizing, maybe they're empty nesters, but really truly understanding where they're at and reminding them why this neighborhood home or whatever it is fits what they've been looking for. So it just goes back, I think the negotiation is one way before you're in contract with your buyer or with your seller, and it's really about understanding them. And I've just been going back to not trying to always have a victory. I think that's the wrong mindset. It's more about having a clear understanding and trying to solve problems, right? Because how many times do we get into a transaction and I feel like I'm just in this battle with another agent? Like there's nothing going on with the clients involved. And look, there's going to be some of that, right? That there has to be. But when you work with a good agent, transparency comes out and there is no winner and loser and there's just an outcome. And I think that's what's important.
Well, and it sounds
you
like
can't do that. You can't do that without through email and text, right?
Correct.
If I send Lauren an email that has sincerity behind it, and depending where she's at and where she reads it, we may be in a fight before we know it. And then when we get off the phone, it's like 5
Not
minutes.
with Lauren, never.
5 minutes of diffusing this before we get on, right? So I think that was a great point.
Yeah. And storytelling, it sounds like you do a lot of storytelling and reverse storytelling when you're with the seller with all those memories and then with the buyer going into it, which helps set that stage so they can physically see themselves moving out or moving in.
I call these all hidden negotiations, right? All of these little morsels that you're all talking about, these are all the small hidden things that most people, not even our clients or the general public, actually understand or realize that great professionals like you all are doing every single day. So if I can have you all point your minds to, some hidden negotiation, something that you would like to, shed some light on that you all do that most people don't realize. And Matt, I'll start with you and then I'll go to Lauren next. What do you think is either a hidden task, hidden negotiation, hidden thing, something small that you do that moves the needle?
So for me, it's a lot about property prep and getting the product to look, real estate ultimately is a product, right?
Yeah.
So getting
absolutely.
the product to look better than all of the other product around. And negotiating with a seller to do that prep.
Because you're ultimately telling them the way that they have designed their home.
Correct.
And the way it currently
the way
sits.
that they're living, the way that you're living is not good.
It's not good. It's not going to help sell. That's a tough negotiation.
And you have to remove all those pictures behind you of all your children.
So, on that particular topic, I do have a conversation with sellers that it is very difficult to live in a museum. And because of what media has done, that we've all bought into, people expect that we live in this Instagram or HGTV world. And I, I have a stack of paper here on my desk that you can't see because it's off to the
out
side.
of the frame.
So, having that conversation with sellers is a bit of a negotiation, and it's a little hidden negotiation in there. And it's something you have to approach, to Chris's point about the emotionality of everything. You have to approach it very gently. Because
and I think
they may love their purple dining room, but I can tell you the buyers aren't going to like their purple dining room.
So how do you go about that? Because I think this is one of the pieces that agents have one of the hardest times with, is they don't want to offend the client. And they go in and they see grandma's draperies and everything else. How do you have that conversation?
Depends on who I'm dealing with. So, about 30% of my business is trust and estates. And so that's a little bit easier because generally the successor trustee, it's often their parents. They often recognize that their parents' home doesn't look like their home.
Yeah.
So that's a much easier conversation to have. It is harder with my peers when I sell homes for my peers or homes. I sold something very recently with somebody who has lovely but very specific taste. I happen to have lovely but very specific taste, or I think so. So I'll relate it that way and say we need to make this more universally appealing. And in order to make it more universally appealing, the purple dining room may not get you there. And we don't want somebody to stay focused on that. We want them to stay focused on your home, on the layout, on how beautiful the light is, the things that you can't change. You can change the paint colors, but if a buyer gets so narrowly focused on those things or gets so narrowly focused on so Wayne, I'm also weird. I love family photos. I love leaving family photos in a home. I think it gives it a soul. I have rules around family photos. They can be vintage or they can be current. I don't want anything from the 90s, 80s, or 70s. So
that might be vintage for some people.
Anything 70s, 80s, 90s, we have to strip. But if it's 60s or before or current,
that's a good point.
Those are things that I love in the home.
That's great. That's great. Lauren, you are very outspoken about how when clients trust you, because I've seen her create multiple pieces of content about when they actually follow her lead in terms of redesigning the home to sell, they have better outcomes. So why don't you pick up where Matt left off there?
Yeah, I can't post about the sellers that didn't listen to me and are big losers until those homes have sold or I fired them.
Big losers.
But I find that a few of the hidden struggles with negotiation that really lend itself to buyers or sellers that I work with is that I am there to educate, not agree. And I think that some agents might struggle with that mindset, but that's my mindset. And additionally, with buyers and sellers, another struggle is that I have to explain that every decision has a consequence. And that's the decision of you asking 8 million questions to the listing agent when you're at an open house, that's coming back with a ick factor on the counteroffer. As a buyer, that's the seller shooting for the moon when you're not in a multiple. Those decisions have consequences that could cost you business. And so I think that is something internally we have to slip in to whatever client we're representing.
Educate, not agree.
I love that.
That is so great. Give us maybe a couple of examples. Leave out the names of the innocents, but give us some examples of when you really are not agreeing with what they're saying and you're working hard to educate them.
I mean, they don't always listen to me, but that's still my job.
Sure.
I have a situation right now where I have a new build where we have multiple offers and my seller countered over asking. I thought that was a big mistake. We're 1% within our list price. Like, come on. And I had to put on record. It's just like when you list a house that's too high, you put on record, the comps don't support this number.
Yeah.
I'm happy to try it your way, but I'm not in agreement with it. And that's the fallback for when you go back to the reduction when it doesn't sell. You have that in writing because you educated them, you told them they didn't agree. You're willing to agree, but with the caveat that you know, that's not your suggestion. On this situation that I'm currently in, I've warned the seller, you're risking losing the buyer by doing this. Not only one buyer, but two buyers. But he's like, whatever.
And I love that she puts it in writing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I like to put everything in writing just to protect myself and to have the, sword to fall back on. But, those kinds of examples, especially within pricing, that's like very easy to educate on, but also with the counter process, just like, oh, you want to remove a buyer's loan and appraisal contingency? Like, why? Like, they need that, if you do that, that's risky. I don't know that I would do that. What's your purpose? Those kinds of conversations. And like that decision could have a consequence that's going to make the buyer feel uncomfortable and that you're unreasonable.
The curiosity factor, like Chris.
Well, yeah, that just
what
goes,
would make you want to do that?
well, it just goes back to that mindset that they all have is it's not about winners and losers. It's about setting them up so that each person can get what they ultimately want and giving that objective perspective that they all have because they've sold a lot of real estate and have dealt with a lot of circumstances. So, Chris, what about you? What are some of those hidden negotiations that you find up there in Santa Barbara?
Yeah, I'm just going back to clarity and managing expectations. I mean, I think the one thing that prevents future conflict with clients or in a transaction is having the difficult conversations and telling clients what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. And obviously with experience and transactional history, that becomes a little easier because you probably show up with statistics or you're able to talk and do some storytelling and back yourself up with that. But it's really it's uncomfortable, right? And I think that's the hidden negotiation that separates people is to get in there and have that uncomfortability because when you walk away, if there's two other agents behind you, if you're going in for a listing presentation, you're probably going to separate yourself from just agreeing with the sellers and being the professional that shows how you get your results. So I think the tough conversations is the big separator for me. One other thing that I share, apparently my team tells me what I do well is expectations. Like whether it's with my team or with my sellers or with my buyers, for right or wrong, is like I set expectations and I set those up early on. I set those up with listings. I set those up with buyers. I set myself up for life, right? Like if I can't be everywhere all the time, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I explain the process, what's going to happen. There's expectations. If Chris can't show up, what the backup plan looks like with the team. So it's clarity, it's expectations. I think that is something I preach a lot with my team and with my clients. The other thing is I coined a little bit of a term with my team. This kind of came out of the whole commission thing that we were all dealing with a few years ago. And that is questions are not objections. When you get asked about commissions or anything else, do not freeze up and panic. Most of the time, it's just a question. They have no idea what they were talking about. They were just at the grocery store buying a juice. Someone mentioned it to them. Now they're asking you about it. And now with AI, they have more questions. Questions are not objections. What I tell my team is they're opportunities for us to demonstrate our expertise and our value. And when you understand that and you study your craft, you use those questions to elevate yourself, right? So I think that's some of the negotiations.
I like that. And let's talk about objections. I'm glad you brought that up because you all represent a lot of clients every single year. You have a huge book of business. And I think that when other agents see all of you on stage, sometimes they think that it's easier for you in some shape or form. And so, Lauren, talk about objections. Do you get commission objections? Do you get objections to, repairs requested? Do you get objections on a regular basis? And then how do you feel about those objections?
I don't get objections to buyer broker agreement commission. I just got a referral for a buyer. I still haven't met them in person. We wrote an offer when I was in Hawaii. I have a buyer broker sign for 2.5%.
You're not helping what I just said, right?
I mean, I think the objections don't come from your value that you present when you present it properly. And where I am 25 years later, that's just a non-negotiable for me. If you want to work with me, this is how I operate. This is what I charge. We'll go to the seller for it. If not, this is the difference you would in theory need to make up. And if you want to work with other people, that's great. I'm not your person. So that's my objection to them. Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, request for repair objections between buyers and sellers. I mean, we're not a party to that. Obviously, it's not our purse strings that are being pulled, and we are just the facilitators of the negotiation, which is happening, which they don't know behind the scenes. And all the conversations that we're having with the other agent of the true bottom line. And it's like the psychology game where we got to talk to the other agent, then we got to explain it in a way that our seller understands or buyer understands. Then we got to go back, and the circus, and the circus wheel goes back and forth and round. But I find lately, the objections don't seem to be my value. I think the objections seem to be more of complacency of sellers of properties that are not selling, and the conversation of not wanting to see the mirror shown to their face of why the property isn't being sold, where they come back and object that it's like you. So that's the objection that I'm struggling with more than anything.
Do any of you, to make your negotiations easier when it comes to the request for repairs, do any of you get a pre-inspection before it goes on the market to get rid of all of the little stuff that usually clogs up a home inspection?
Chris, go for it.
Yeah, I think there's even on this panel, maybe there's different ideas. I'm a huge fan, as my team is, of doing pre-inspections. I like to not have surprises. I like to set the narrative for what needs to be done. I like to go through a beautiful home that maybe has some handyman items that maybe now a buyer is going to be wondering what else is going on. When I know nothing else is going on with the house, I want to knock those out. If there are big issues, I want to know how we're going to handle that, set those expectations, clarity, have those conversations up front. The last thing you want to do is get a big shiny offer and then be in the middle of an emotional nightmare discussing something huge. So I'm a big fan of getting those inspections up front. We also have different inspectors, especially when it comes to like roofing and specific vendors, where you all know who to call if you want the $100,000 bid, and you know who to call for the $30,000 bid.
Yeah.
And so if I get those bids up front, then I could kind of create that narrative again up front, right? So I'm a big fan of preparation, as is the team. And that goes back to just having those and then that allows you to have those conversations early on. And as Lauren was saying, she doesn't come up against a lot of objections because she's been doing this for so long, and she sits down at the table and she approaches everything in her presentation, I'm assuming, that's going to happen and take place. So they're not objections. She's just addressing it and she's going right after it. And I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, a $500 problem challenge becomes a $5,000 challenge when you're in the middle of an emotional transaction. Right?
And I know, Matt, you smirked a little when I said pre-inspection. What's your theory on it?
I don't do them.
You don't?
Generally,
Okay.
I don't do them. They stop the flow of money. So if it's a major fixer, and so I have this phrasing, I want to meet clients where they are, and I want to support clients how they want to be supported. So if I have a client that doesn't want to do the property prep, I'm still game for it, but I take a different approach. And that's when I'll do the pre-inspections. If we know that there's a problem, if the seller was told that the fireplace doesn't work when they bought, then I might do that fireplace inspection. But we see a lot of really old inventory. And in the inspection reports, as we all know, as professionals, they're comparing this home to something that was built yesterday. And it is really hard to compare a 1926 house
Yes.
that has been well loved and cared for and works perfectly fine to something that was built yesterday.
Sure.
And I think generally buyers, you know, look at the inspection report and take it as gospel. And they don't have the inspector there saying to them, you know, this is a very stupid example, but it's an example. That Wallace Neff with that banister rail, that the gap is more than 4 inches.
Yeah.
You know, I'm required to put down in my report, but nobody on this earth is going to change that railing. You know, the inspector being able to have that conversation on site with the client, I think, is invaluable. And when you do pre-inspections, you don't have that gift.
Yeah.
Lauren, what's your thought on that, on pre-inspections?
I kind of, maybe this is bad, but like, I think like I do the pre-inspection. When I walk into a property that I'm going to list and prep, like, and a lot recently, I've seen visible mold. I've seen drip marks on the wall that give me pause. I just see things to the naked eye that I just think need to be addressed. So we literally address it. I'm not walking around, you know, digging for stuff, but I think I would say probably of our last like 12 listings, 4 of them had water issues that we prepped before with proper remediation and clearance and restoration, and went into the escrow process of, you know, mindfulness that we saw this and we took care of it properly. And you should feel good about that. But the pre-inspection process, which I think seems to be a little bit more of a Northern California thing, is really not that commonplace, I would say, in LA.
Interesting.
It is a unique thing that separates Northern California and Southern California. It's right about the Santa Barbara area. And even in Santa Barbara, right, Chris, there's a debate about, there are some that do and some that don't.
Yeah. My group does a lot of property preparation, and I think that's kind of our niche. And so for us, that kind of welcomes the inspections, because it's like, why are we going to go put all these beautiful flowers and stuff in front of the house when we know this is going to be a huge issue in escrow, right? So because we get so involved with property preparation, having those reports for us kind of helps us figure out where we're going to put the funds. So that's just our strategy with properties. I don't think there's a right or wrong.
I agree with Matt when it comes to the older homes. We owned that 1906 Victorian farmhouse, and to do a pre-inspection, usually on those, you know, any old home, you're right. You know, the buyer comes in and it's like this thick.
Yeah. I mean, at some point an inspection is done. And I suppose to Matt's point is that the buyer is committed to a certain extent at that point, and then we can dialogue that through, and those conversations continue to happen, right? And you just kind of navigate your way through it. But what it sounds like is
that said, though, the example of the $500 problem becomes a $5,000 problem does happen.
Oh,
you just have to be able to work through that with your skill.
And I think that the common denominator for all of you, whether you do it as formally in the form of a report, you are all doing what we're obligated to do, is those visual inspections and point out things that raise concerns. And you guys raise those concerns early, and you begin having those dialogues with the sellers early. And so let's flip that now. Let's take that same mindset, if you don't mind. And I'm pivoting a little bit from our script here. The perspective as a buyer's agent, right? Because depending on who we're representing dictates how we need to behave, right? Is that fair? You know, when you're representing that buyer and you do get that inspection report on a property that was built in 1911, beautifully maintained, what is your approach, Matt, with that? Your job is to advocate for that buyer.
With a buyer that has never had any experience with
these older homes.
An old home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it depends on what the problem is. Generally, I will have another expert in.
Yeah.
I mean, Sam, you know this. We've restored now 2 homes. So,
Yes.
I have some area of expertise on it. Oh God, I'm going to say this in front of our broker of record. I don't love giving 3 referrals for inspections.
I'm okay with that. I really am.
So I will give 3 referrals, especially if it's a client that I don't know well. Without fail, they'll ask me who I would hire. And I will then say 90% of my inspections are done by this guy. He's going to tell you everything you never wanted to know about this house. He is so detailed, it's overwhelming. But at the end of the inspection, there's no stone unturned. You will know what's going on with this house. And then generally, I am there for inspections, especially on the older homes. I'm there. And I'm asking questions from an inquisitive and expert way that help inform the client. I then am very quick. So, like the general inspector and I have now worked together for almost 20 years. So he'll say, the moment he gets there, he'd be like, roof. And so I will have the appointment with the roofer before the client ever hears that the roof needs to be looked at again.
Yeah.
So I've pre-solved the problem.
And let me just share the one thing you were hesitant to share with, the advice of giving, you always have to give 3 people, I think is an antiquated approach, right? Because if you are going to be a trusted advisor, you need to be working with well-qualified people who are licensed, who are accredited in their field, that we rely on to be able to provide this information. And if you have somebody that you're using and they have produced great results for you over time, we should be recommending those people. It's part of what we do.
Would you say it should be more than 1?
I think it depends on the circumstance. I think it depends on the circumstance. I think it depends on the client. And I think what you're hearing is from amazing, great professionals who know how to guide that process accordingly. And I love
Stella is on the line for you right now.
I will have that. I will have that discussion every single time with them because the reality is that our clients are looking to qualified professionals to guide them through that process.
No, I agree.
And that's what these amazing people are here. And so what I like what Matt said though was he uses that opportunity to ask deeper questions that the client that he's representing may not know how to ask or to even ask.
I want to say one thing about that.
Yeah, please, Lauren.
I agree. I'm at, most of our inspections. But I also think you have to have clarity on who your buyer is and what may be a big deal to you is not a big deal to them.
Amen.
And we have represented many houses, old and new, that there are issues that to me, no, not okay. Like we're closing on a deal today that there was creosote found in the basement.
Wow.
Seller didn't believe it. We had to have all these experts come out. There's no test for it. It's just like literally a smell. Everyone knows it. Seller didn't believe it until we tested it. Therefore, they give us no information. I find that homes with creosote are very challenging and difficult to sell. My clients were both major lawyers, buyers. It wasn't a big deal to them. They didn't care. And so you have to be mindful as the advocate and the agent to give your clients the information, but not impress upon them your position or red flags, because that's their decision to buy that house in that condition with those findings. And I think that is something that is like an inner negotiation that we all have to have within ourselves to be like, well, I wouldn't buy that house, but they would.
Yeah.
And so that's something you have to think about through the inspection process too.
Matt,
and like, what is too much work? What is too much work to someone? Maybe it's too much work to you, but it's not too much work to them.
Yep.
I'll often have a pre-dialogue that says, the inspection report is going to come up with challenges. And, everybody has their hot button issue. If you say knob and tube wiring to me, I just sort of shrug and I think it'll get replaced.
Yeah.
If you tell me it has a Zinscope panel, I could care less. I mean, I'll get it fixed. But
Sure.
if you tell me the house has rats, I'm out. That is me. I don't want rats. I'm not interested in a journey with rats.
Yes.
That's my hot button issue. That's not necessarily your hot button issue.
That's right.
Mhm.
So you have to decide what impacts you and your family living in this house.
Mhm.
Chris, what say you?
I think they've covered it. I mean, again, going back to what Matt said, I have a pre-conversation, if you will, and let my clients know what's ahead for them. I mean, I pretty much know what is going to be in every inspection beforehand, and that comes with some experience and the fact that I've done remodels. But I'm like, look, we're going to see GFCIs. We're going to see stuff with electrical. I can name 5 things that's on every report that's out there, and I can say, but this is what we're looking for. We're looking to see if there's any signs of potential mold. We're looking for foundation issues. We're looking for water intrusion. Those are the big ones, and we'll address those. But be prepared for this. And then moving forward, I said, it's much like a car manual. You want this report because there's going to be all these things in there, like Matt said, that aren't up to code today, but that are still in working order. But you should use this as a manual for your home so that annually you know that you need to get on the roof and caulk the vents, do these things around your home. So I set them up for what's coming in that buyer's inspection report, and then it's not so heavy. And then on the big items, when we're going through it, I try to listen to them, and then I point out what I believe are big items or good negotiation points or things I would be concerned with and fill them out to see if they believe it's a concern, make sure they understand why I think it's a concern, and move on.
And I also think that what can help with our negotiations and those listening to this is when you are facilitating the request for repair and the findings from the inspections with your buyer, your best negotiation between you and your client is to offer the support, to offer the vendors, to offer the tradespeople that can help them do the work. And that oftentimes takes some of the piece of the puzzle out of the daunting task of fixing these because they know and trust you and trust that you have the vendors to support them. So I think that is something that hopefully most agents are also offering to their clients, which will only help with the negotiation with the seller.
And as we're wrapping up, you all 3 are extremely busy, but you all have time to spend with your families and to travel and to go, different places. Everyone must think you work 24 hours a day for all the business you do. What are your non-negotiables that you let your clients know that I'm doing X, Y, and Z? And this is how you can reach me or you can't reach me. Lauren, you're consummate traveler. So how do you set that stage so people know that they can have a life?
Well, a non-negotiable for me would just be my integrity and that I believe in what's in my client's best interest. And if it's not, I won't recommend it. I do have a life. I do sleep when I can, and I try to respond in a timely manner, but I think there are boundaries to 6:30 text messages, which are unacceptable in Pacific Standard Time. That AM, those kinds of things are not okay. But I think the long run is just like, our honesty and trying to put our clients first, and that, of course, this is a 24-hour job. It doesn't mean we're going to be available every second of the day, but making our clients know and feel that they are our priority, and that we'll do everything we can to see their efforts through.
Yeah. Chris, what about you? What are your non-negotiables that help you stay grounded?
Oh man, all the other stuff's really easy. The biggest and hardest negotiation is the negotiation with yourself.
So true.
It's work. It's always a work in progress, but you got to stay committed to it, right? And I think that when you set these boundaries, it doesn't mean you care any less about the client or your job. I think it means, for me, everyone has their tolerances. I could run pretty far and deep, but I'm not at my best when I do that. I'm basically a shell of who I am, and I feel like my clients deserve me at my best. So I keep that in mind. I'm very transparent. I'm very honest with my clients. I think I attract clientele that is like myself due to that. And I set it up from the beginning now. I set up, even if I don't have any travel planned, life happens. And I set that up. Luckily, I have a team and I have, I set up what the calendar looks like, what's to be expected, how we're going to handle things that come up that we weren't expecting, who my go-to is, because I might be on go live, there might be calls coming in, there might be a showing, who's showing up for that. And then throughout, constant communication, because good communication kind of takes away that, like, for example, I'm going on vacation next week. I have communicated, I start today. And now when I'm away, I could continue that communication and it doesn't matter where I'm at. And I have someone on my team that's here to answer if they physically need to be here. And so it's just setting it up, clarity, be a true professional. And I think one thing that we didn't get to is, for me, I'm huge on preparation, and it's not just preparation per listing, it's preparation throughout your career. And I think preparation provides confidence. And when you have confidence, you have leverage, right? And so when you run your business that way and you start to believe in that, you could start to buy back some of your time. But it's difficult and it's a constant, even with my team, right? Setting boundaries with my team. When can they call me about things that are blowing up? Can they call me at 8 p.m.? So yeah, that's the toughest one out of all these. But you got to deal with it. You gotta
Matt,
deal
what
with
about you? What are the non-negotiables for you? I know,
I mean,
Matt.
I have like a very tangible. Go ahead,
Well, I know that Matt cannot drink a bad glass of wine. He just won't do it. So that I know.
Is there a
And I'm
bad?
with you.
There is definitely a bad glass of wine. So, when I set boundaries, I find that I am at my best, and it makes me my best for the clients that I work with. I read this question, and I have a very tangible thing. I take what I call my mommy hour gym class. It runs from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That is my appointment. It is in my calendar as an appointment. I don't discuss it generally with clients because it's me making a fool of myself with all the moms after they drop their kids off. But it's my therapy, and it's what grounds me, and it's what makes me feel really good so that I can be present. And I will tell you that when I take like an 11 or an 11 o'clock appointment, I am ready for it. And I'm in a really good headspace that without that, I wouldn't have.
That's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. And I'll close off our session by saying, setting your boundaries is important and doing what you need to do. But I also know that you all step up when you have to step up. It's okay to sometimes cross over your own boundaries because, let's face it, we all chose to be in this business. I'll say that again. We chose to be in this business. And the one thing, as your broker of record, and this is for everybody that's listening, that I want to honor and try hard every day to honor, is that because you chose this business, you deserve to have somebody that will respond in that manner. I too chose to be in this business. Wayne too chose to be in this business. And our job is to choose to be available when we want to be available, or when it's appropriate for me to be available for all of you. And so on behalf of everybody that's listening, guys, thank you so much for everything that you've shared today. Thank you.
You all three are amazing.
You guys really are. And thank you for choosing this business. Your buyers and sellers love you for it. And we really do appreciate it.
Oh, look at all the love they get.
Okay, Laura's like, oh. It's a hard business, but it takes special people to do it well. And that's who you all are. So bless you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you.
Thanks.
Be well, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Okay.
All right. What a great episode. It's great to hang out with
great.
them, right? So
yeah, lots of good little nuggets for everybody.
yeah, they're just such amazing people. And anytime I get an opportunity to hang out with any of them, I learn so much from them, and it's great.
Yeah.
It really, really is.
Just amazing.
Right.
And they're almost like the introverted agents, they do a lot of business. They're not really extroverted people,
I mean, Give them a glass of wine or two.
Yes. No, but you know how some are like just like on the top of their car with a cell phone, you know?
Right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right.
that's what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah, sure. No, these
Yeah,
these
they're
are
awesome.
consummate professionals. They are
love it.
absolutely amazing at what they do. So thank you everybody for tuning in today. Any announcements, Chris? No, we haven't anything. Okay, we're good to go.
We're
Thank you
good.
guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome, guys. Great to be here.
Bye.